The rise of Saladin, a Muslim leader who resisted the Crusaders. Introduction: a strategic genius and unifier. Saladin, born Salah ad-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub in 1137, rose from relative obscurity to become one of the most famous and respected military leaders in history. As the Sultan of Egypt and Syria, he became the driving force behind the Muslim resurgence in the Levant during the Crusades. His leadership, military genius, and unifying vision of jihad, holy war, allowed him to reclaim much of the territory that had been captured by the Crusaders, including Jerusalem. Saladin's ability to unite the Muslim world, his tactics on the battlefield, and his honorable reputation shaped the course of the Crusades and had a lasting impact on Christian-Muslim relations for centuries. Chapter 1: Early Life and Rise to Power. Saladin's background. Saladin was born into a Kurdish family in Tikrit, modern-day Iraq, in 1137. His family, though not among the ruling elite, had connections to the Seljuk Empire, which dominated much of the Muslim world at the time. Saladin's early education focused on Islamic studies, but he soon turned to military service under the command of his uncle, Shirkuh, a prominent military leader. Shirkuh and the Ayyubid dynasty. Saladin's first significant military experience came as part of his uncle's service in the courts of the Fatimid Caliphate in Egypt. As the Fatimid Caliphate weakened and the Crusaders continued their push into the Holy Land, Saladin's military career began to flourish. Saladin served as a general under his uncle during campaigns in Egypt, ultimately becoming the leader of the Ayyubid dynasty after his uncle's death in 1169. Becoming Sultan of Egypt. In 1169, Saladin became the vizier, chief minister, of Egypt under the Fatimid Caliphate. Upon the death of the last Fatimid Caliph in 1171, Saladin formally ended the Shia dynasty of the Fatimids and re-established Sunni Islam as the dominant faith in Egypt, consolidating his power and laying the foundation for his future rule over much of the Muslim world. Chapter 2: Unifying the Muslim World. Saladin's strategy of unification. One of Saladin's most significant achievements was his ability to unite the fragmented Muslim territories in the Levant. At the time, the Muslim world was divided into various factions, including the Seljuks, the Fatimids, and the Zengids. This division left the Muslims vulnerable to external threats, especially the Crusaders. Consolidating power in Egypt and Syria. After securing Egypt, Saladin turned his attention to Syria, where he confronted the Zengid dynasty and its leader, Nur ad-Din. Through a series of military campaigns, alliances, and political maneuvers, Saladin succeeded in defeating Nur ad-Din's forces and taking control of Syria. By 1183, Saladin had unified Egypt, Syria, and large parts of the Levant under his rule, creating the Ayyubid Sultanate. Political and religious legitimacy. Saladin's success was not only due to his military prowess but also his ability to legitimize his rule. He presented himself as a devout Muslim ruler, committed to the defense of Islam against the Crusaders. His unification efforts were framed as a religious duty, uniting the Muslim world against the external threat of the Crusades. Chapter 3: Saladin and the Crusaders. The Crusader threat and Saladin's response. By the time Saladin had consolidated power, the Crusader states in the Levant were firmly established. The Kingdom of Jerusalem, along with smaller Crusader states like Antioch and Tripoli, posed a constant threat to Muslim territories. Saladin's primary goal was to reclaim Jerusalem, the most sacred city in Islam, which had been under Crusader control since 1099. Saladin's initial encounters with the Crusaders. Early in his career, Saladin fought numerous skirmishes and battles against the Crusader states. His tactical genius and strategic foresight helped him achieve several key victories, such as the capture of the Crusader-controlled city of Damascus in 1174. Saladin was patient and methodical, knowing that his ultimate goal was to weaken the Crusader states enough to retake Jerusalem. The Battle of Hattin, 1187. Saladin's most significant military triumph came at the Battle of Hattin on July 4, 1187. In this battle, Saladin decisively defeated the Crusader forces, capturing or killing many of the knights and leaders, including King Guy of Lusignan. This victory opened the door for Saladin to lay siege to Jerusalem. Chapter 4: The siege and recapture of Jerusalem. The fall of Jerusalem, 1187. After his victory at Hattin, Saladin turned his attention to Jerusalem. The city had been a Crusader stronghold for nearly 90 years, and its capture was considered the symbol of Christian dominance in the Holy Land. Saladin's goal was not only to reclaim the city, but also to restore Muslim control over the sacred Islamic sites within it. Saladin's humane treatment of Jerusalem's inhabitants. Unlike the Crusaders' previous capture of Jerusalem in 1099, where Muslims and Jews were massacred, Saladin offered a remarkably humane treatment of the city's inhabitants. After a siege lasting several weeks, Jerusalem surrendered to Saladin in October 1187. Christian inhabitants of the city were allowed to leave safely, and Saladin ensured that the Christian holy sites were preserved. This act of mercy earned Saladin a reputation for chivalry and magnanimity, further solidifying his status as a hero in the Muslim world. Chapter 4. The Siege and Recapture of Jerusalem. The fall of Jerusalem, 1187. After his victory at Hattin, Saladin turned his attention to Jerusalem. The city had been a Crusader stronghold for nearly 90 years, and its capture was considered the symbol of Christian dominance in the Holy Land. Saladin's goal was not only to reclaim the city, but also to restore Muslim control over the sacred Islamic sites within it. Saladin's humane treatment of Jerusalem's inhabitants. Unlike the Crusaders' previous capture of Jerusalem in 1099, where Muslims and Jews were massacred, Saladin offered a remarkably humane treatment of the city's inhabitants. After a siege lasting several weeks, Jerusalem surrendered to Saladin in October 1187. Christian inhabitants of the city were allowed to leave safely, and Saladin ensured that the Christian holy sites were preserved. This act of mercy earned Saladin a reputation for chivalry and magnanimity, further solidifying his status as a hero in the Muslim world. The significance of Jerusalem's recapture. The recapture of Jerusalem was a monumental victory for Saladin and a major blow to the Crusader cause. The loss of Jerusalem not only symbolized the end of Christian rule over the city, but also marked the beginning of a new phase in the Crusades, with the Third Crusade being launched in response. Chapter 5. The Third Crusade and Saladin's Diplomacy. The Crusader Response. The Third Crusade, 1189 to 1192. In response to the loss of Jerusalem, Pope Gregory VIII called for the Third Crusade, which was led by three of the most powerful European monarchs of the time: Richard the Lionheart of England, Philip II of France, and Emperor Frederick Barbarossa of the Holy Roman Empire. The campaign of the Third Crusade. The Crusaders aimed to recapture Jerusalem, but despite several significant victories, such as the capture of Acre, 1191, they were unable to reclaim the city. The crusade ultimately ended in a stalemate, with Saladin retaining control of Jerusalem but agreeing to allow Christian pilgrims to visit the city. Saladin's diplomacy and legacy. Throughout the Third Crusade, Saladin demonstrated not only his military prowess but also his diplomatic acumen. He negotiated with Richard the Lionheart, and their mutual respect for each other's abilities and honor became legendary. Saladin allowed Richard's forces to leave the region safely after the Crusaders' failure to recapture Jerusalem, and the two leaders agreed to a truce. Saladin's lasting impact. Saladin's legacy extends beyond his military victories. He became a symbol of Muslim unity and resistance, and his success in recapturing Jerusalem inspired future generations of Muslims to resist foreign invasions. He also left a lasting cultural and intellectual impact, as his reign saw a revival of Islamic scholarship, arts, and architecture. The continuing influence of Saladin. Saladin's name remains synonymous with chivalry, honor, and courage in the Muslim world. His victories, particularly his recapture of Jerusalem, solidified his reputation as a great leader and warrior. His diplomatic skills, religious piety, and commitment to unity have made him a revered figure in both Islamic and world history. Chapter 6. The End of Saladin's Era and His Legacy. Saladin's Death and the Aftermath. Saladin died in 1193, just 6 years after the recapture of Jerusalem. His death left a power vacuum in the Muslim world, but the Ayyubid dynasty he founded would continue to resist Crusader advances for several decades. The successors and fragmentation of the Ayyubid dynasty. After Saladin's death, His empire was divided among his sons and relatives. Although the Ayyubid dynasty remained in control of much of the Levant for several generations, internal divisions and external threats, including the continued Crusader presence and the rise of the Mongols, eventually weakened the Ayyubids. The long-lasting legacy of Saladin. Saladin's legacy in the Crusades was not limited to his military victories. He epitomized the qualities of leadership, strategy, and diplomacy that helped to unite the Muslim world against the Crusader states. His leadership marked the height of Muslim resistance to the Crusades, and his influence can be seen in later efforts to resist foreign invasions in the region. Cultural and religious symbolism. In both the Muslim world and beyond, Saladin is remembered as a symbol of resistance against foreign occupation and as a unifier of diverse Muslim territories. His actions, leadership, and reputation helped shape both the history of the Crusades and the subsequent relations between Christian and Muslim powers. Conclusion: Saladin's role in shaping the Crusades and history. Saladin's rise to power and his role in resisting the Crusaders is a key chapter in the history of the Crusades. His success in uniting the Muslim world, recapturing Jerusalem, and his honorable treatment of enemies set him apart as a leader who blended military skill with diplomacy and ethics. Saladin's achievements, both on and off the battlefield, left a lasting legacy that influenced not only the Crusades, but also the broader course of Middle Eastern and world history. His name remains synonymous with honor, valor, and the struggle for justice, making him a hero in both Muslim and global history.